Hello, is this Rabbi Chaim?
Yes, how are you, Rabbi Asher?
Wow, I've heard so much about you, and all good things. All good
Wow,
things.
that's great. Yeah, actually, the same is true for you.
So, tell me a little bit about your story in terms of. I know you're a convert. I'm a convert as well, and what I like to do is encourage people to follow our path or the path that we've taken. Go ahead.
Yeah, great. I'm indeed a convert. I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'll try to keep it short. I was born in the Netherlands, and I come from a family which, from my father's side, has Jewish roots, but that wasn't really very relevant for me. I was raised as a Christian, and my father, his family never actually officially accepted Christianity, but he married my mom, and she was Christian. And eventually my dad was also baptized, so I was raised a Christian. And being, I guess, that my father was a new believer, somebody who wasn't raised in faith, he took more of a, let's say, critical look at Christian theology, etc. And he started to lean more towards Judaism. And afterwards he started kind of like exploring his own family tree a bit and stuff. And I guess because of both of these things, I got a good dose of Judaism growing up. Like I knew about the holidays, and also, by the way, Chaim is the name that I got at birth. It's not something that I took on later.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and that also actually led to people in high school thinking that I was Jewish, and also mocking me for it, etc. And I guess because of all those things, I was basically pushed a bit towards Judaism. It wasn't actually those things that led me to it, because I guess it was more just a general like lack of direction, which you see in today's society. I guess everywhere in the West. It's not only the Netherlands. It's
What
all
kind
of
of Christian
Western
were
Europe.
you? An evangelical?
Protestant.
Oh, okay.
No, regular Protestant.
Uh-huh.
I saw some flaws over there, and also just like for us, even though at home it was relevant, you lack practical tools. I know about I've listened to, I guess, most of your videos. I think that's the way you also worded that in Christianity you lack practical tools to really influence society around you. You do have to some extent. I mean, moral behavior goes a long way, but
Right, it lacks what I like to say ethical sophistication. Although it's very
exactly.
ethical, but it lacks.
Very, very good choice of words. The exact same thing, what I think. And also, I went to a Christian high school, but like the way that Christianity is just diluted basically in practice today in Holland, and is way more than in the United States. It's just there is not very much left of it. It is really very watered down, and I needed more direction. And also, I guess in your teens and like your adolescence, you're looking for an identity and you're looking for direction in your life, and Christianity just wasn't really cutting it. I guess my first, let's say, inclinations towards Judaism weren't even they're definitely not the things that are keeping me Jewish now. So I was looking for an identity, and I was looking for more direction, etc. So I started learning Hebrew a bit, and also in my family we were always, also even my grandfather, we were very pro-Israel. Like we was always a subject that was spoken about, and basically we all were supportive of Israel. So all of those things contributed to it. But I didn't make the step towards formally converting to Judaism until I read the 6 questions, right? The 6 questions people ask about Judaism by Dennis Prager.
Oh, the 9 questions, I think.
9 questions. Yeah, it's a very long time since I read it.
Right.
But basically what that book did for me was show how practical Judaism is, and how basically it takes away a bunch of misconceptions about Judaism on a very basic level. I mean, afterwards, when you start learning more, I think even actually even if you are more learned, it's a good book to read, because it will bring you back to sort of the core and what you like what it's all about, and you don't want to get lost too much in the minutiae of halakha, I guess.
That's one of the main books I recommend on my site. Dennis Prager, although he's currently not religious by Orthodox standards, I love the way he thinks. He has a very sharp mind, and he is one of the main people that opened my eyes to the notion of proselytizing in Judaism. He actually has many articles and lectures on the idea of spreading Judaism to people who are looking for a religious outlet. Yeah, I mean, I attribute a lot of my thinking to Dennis Prager.
Yeah, so the same thing actually goes for me, and that basically showed how practical it was, and how kashrut, for instance, isn't just about meat being blessed by a rabbi or something like that. And basically all these really practical commandments which contribute to the greater good, like as a society. And the Rambam puts it later on, which I didn't know about then, is tikkun hevra, but also obviously your own tikkun, like you have to become more refined, you have to become more ethically refined, a more ethical person. And when I saw that side of Judaism, I really decided that this is what I want. And from that point on, I wasn't actually very happy in university at all, and I dropped out of university, and to move to Israel, I went to yeshiva, and well, that's actually a long story, but I won't go into that right now. Eventually, I converted with the Eda Haredit in Mea Shearim. I was actually helped by Satmar of all denominations to convert.
One of the most important things, I think, when coming to Judaism is meeting the right people. And it could be lonely if you think a certain way and you realize that 99% of Judaism thinks a different way. And I think that one of the greatest things we can achieve with these talks is building bridges with people who are considering Judaism, but perhaps they have no outlet to authentic Judaism, because all they have is Chabad and like mystical forms of Judaism that, although they aren't completely bad, they typically don't fill our ethical needs. In other words, a lot of people...
I fully agree. I really agree. And also, that's why I sometimes view it as hashgacha pratit, that I converted to Judaism when I did, because I think today my thinking is way more sophisticated and way more deep than it was back then. Obviously, I mean, I'm 30 now, and then I was 18 years old. So I think with the way that I think now, would be very hard for me to get past a beit din. And then I was conformist enough to wear the entire garb and just repeat what the rabbi said. That way it was way easier for me to convert. But I definitely feel for people who are past that stage, and really who ask specific questions, which I encourage people to ask, and also think a bit further than just what's presented to them. And then it becomes very hard for them to convert to Judaism. That's why I'm also active in teaching people for conversion, and not only that, but also to actually put them in touch with people who could convert them. But sadly, the rabbi who ordained me, his conversions are not accepted by the state of Israel, or I think even I don't actually know how that is, if it's accepted in the United States or not, but I guess not, because it's not, even though he is with the Rabbanut HaReshit, he's not allowed on their behalf to convert, but he doesn't care, he does it anyway.
Right. 99% of all rabbis aren't recognized or on that list. That's the only downside. I encourage people to get the most recognized conversion possible, but the thing is, a lot of those conversions are typically performed or overseen by people who we don't agree with. Sometimes we have to utilize these groups to get that piece of paper to ultimately get us where we belong. And for example, I have a similar story to you. I converted in America, but I was always in modern Orthodox circles. I converted through a Young Israel, and straight from South Florida, I went to Aish Torah, and it's always been not modern Judaism, but not ultra Orthodoxy, right? It's more like a rationalized position. I mean, back then there wasn't much online in terms of purposeful ethical Judaism. I mean, now people have it easy with so many groups, with people like David R Chaim, things that took us years to figure out that you could learn in 5 minutes on a YouTube video, and people take that for granted. You know?
Right. Actually, if I may interrupt, I think
Sure.
also that for that reason, my contribution that I want to make is in making shiurim about basically the exact same topics, but in Dutch. And I haven't really been doing that because, well, busy with other stuff, like I work, I have a family, etc. And also I'm not very proficient with making of videos and everything, but I think I should go learn that and just go do it, because I see a lot of people from Holland who really have sincere will and need to convert to Judaism, but they know very little because their level of English is quite low, so they can't, like, I couldn't tell them to go read the 9 Questions or other books about Judaism, or even watch certain YouTube videos, basically like your YouTube videos or other ones. So I think I should be basically presenting the same material in Dutch, obviously with my own additions to it, and that's really what I want to do. And at this point, I also offer. I'm open to helping anyone who is interested in conversion, in both in teaching them and also in practically helping them convert. But one thing also that I see is that so many people eventually just don't know what to do anymore, because they're being told so many different things by different people as to how to practically go about converting to Judaism. And many times, sadly, I see that they don't listen to my advice, because there are more people saying something else, and then they don't want to listen. They think that if more people are saying this, and that's probably correct, but eventually they'll just end up getting frustrated and not converting to Judaism, because they don't do the practical thing.
Well, the other side has more resources and just in many cases more time to get their message across. When people are researching Judaism on YouTube, all they get is Rabbi Mizrahi, they get Chabad, and they get tons of it. Right now, there is a handful of rationalist sites like Masora.org. Just for everyone else listening, Ohel Moshe is another one that's a good one. Was it ohelmoshe.com? Is that
Yeah, I know.
The website of Michael Baron?
Yeah, I know Michael Baron. He's a personal friend. I know him.
Right. I could only really think of 3 sites apart from my own. It's a shame. I don't know, like, if it's worth encouraging people to become Jewish if they're going to join the other side. You know what I mean? Because it seems like you're just creating an enemy that you're going to have to fight later on, because these people...
Yeah, that's funny. I also think about that quite often. I think I actually did help people who eventually ended up not accepting my specific brand of Judaism. I just like to think that I did something good because I contributed to Am Yisrael, but yeah, it's really is a bummer. I would like to be able to get people to accept a more rational form of Judaism.
Now, I mean, Kabbalim really don't bother me as long as they're accepting and they're open-minded. Fine, I don't really care what people believe as long as they behave like decent people. You know, but sometimes these are the ones. I mean, I don't even know how Rabbi David Bachim walks down the streets of Yerushalayim. I mean, people are probably throwing eggs at him all the time. I mean, I would probably encourage you to make audio lectures. That's one of the main reasons I changed the image of my videos for a cartoon, just because I was being too recognizable in synagogues and asked to leave. You know, wow. So it's right now it's an underground movement, and I'll tell you how I came to it. When I was living in Israel, I was in Kohav Shachar. This is after I was married, and then I was watching the videos of our mutual friend Rabbi Yosef Eliyah, and I saw he was living in Yerushalayim, so I invited him for Shabbat. All right, I picked him up somewhere in Malo Dafna, and that Shabbat I convinced him on proselytizing, and he convinced me on Mishneh Torah. And that's what put me on the path to... I mean, I was already a rationalist, but I didn't have the right tools to really package what I believe and hand it over to somebody else, till it was all in my hands, basically 14 volumes, you know, like the Machbili edition. I had the tools to actually properly proselytize my belief system. And since then, he's become pro-seeking converts, and I've been pro-Mishneh Torah and rational Judaism. I mean, I'm not a Rambamist, but I believe in the Rambam style of understanding halakha, which is
Of course, you're not Hasidic.
Right. And I know that he was one of the first Jews you also met in Israel, no?
Yeah. We've been friends for such a long time. I've been in Israel now for over 10 years, and I met him after, I guess, 1 year or something in Israel. So we go way back, and we're good friends.
So people in the rationalist camp typically fall into two categories, either the Yemenite camp or the Spanish-Portuguese camp. So being that you are from the Netherlands, do you feel torn between the two? Because people who have a Dutch background typically also have Spanish-Portuguese lineage.
True, but actually I used to feel the need, I guess, when my character, I guess, was less built to identify with a specific group and say, like, I belong here, I belong there, but I really don't feel the need anymore. I just like to appreciate what both groups and other groups contribute to rational Judaism, but I don't feel the need to identify with one. And it is true that I use a Sephardi prayer book, but I also sometimes use a Yemenite prayer book, actually. When I want a shorter nusach, I use the Rambam's Birkat HaMazon and some other barachot. The way that I have memorized them is according to the Rambam, so I guess it's a bit more of a mixture, but I really don't affiliate with anyone.
I've also stayed in the middle just because I haven't found love from either side. Although there's many groups who agree with me in the bulk of the things I teach, that virtually all of them are against encouraging people to become Jewish, and for some reason they have this itch to spread the Noahide laws. Now, I'm not against the Noahide laws, but I just think that if someone already wants to convert to Judaism, people shouldn't offer it as an alternative. And this is something that
I agree with that. That's exactly my main, and I believe that that's also just the approach of Chazal, of authentic Judaism, that the Rambam writes. So it becomes actually very clear from the Talmud, multiple passages over there, and from even contemporary sources which are non-rabbinic, that rabbis used to really want non-Jews to convert to Judaism, and if they could, then they would convince him and he would convert. Exactly what you say. If a certain geographical area was conquered and the population didn't want to convert to Judaism over there, then there had to be a standard for them as well, and that was the Noahide laws. They were not allowed to be idolaters, etc., and do the other things, but it's not a viable belief system which is meant to be the basis of their daily lives and like hand them kelim with which they can enhance their lives ethically, morally, and connect to God. It was never meant to be that. I guess that's also the ironic thing. What you see very often is that I believe well-meaning rabbis who really think that non-Jews should not convert to Judaism but have the 7 Noahide commandments, that they will quite often try to make up all kinds of stuff which is not found in Jewish tradition. Like they're trying to make different types of prayer books for them, like altered barachot and I don't know what else. And like
they're creating a religion out of it, right? I mean, that's
and that's just not. If anything, that is transgressing making a new religion. I mean, that is as close to making a new religion as it gets, I think.
But I'm glad we're on the same page. I see that this is usually tied with religious Zionism, that the more Zionist someone actually is, the more they have an insular view of Judaism. Well, I support the state of Israel, but I have a more globalist understanding of Judaism, that I think that every time I see a Gentile, I see a Jew fighting to get out.
That's great. Yeah, I don't identify 100% with religious Zionism. The thing is that I think by default I am more categorized as a religious Zionist because I'm not Haredi, but there are definitely also problematic things over there. And actually, I wanted to also clarify that it's not that I don't think that being a Ben Noach or Bat Noach is bad, or in case I believe it has its place in the world. For instance, if you have a kehila somewhere in Chutz La'aretz and it's a vibrant community, but let's say one spouse of the person is interested in converting to Judaism there, but his spouse doesn't want to, then that could be a viable alternative. Like they could be Noachites and they could even visit the synagogue and join Shabbat meals and everything, like identify generally with Judaism and Torah without actually converting. Or if there are other reasons that would make it impossible or just extremely impractical, I personally do believe that if a person lives by himself in some far out place where there is no Jewish community, I believe that it would be possible that perhaps for him it is better to remain a Ben Noach. So I in no way do I espouse the view that Judaism should be for everyone, and that there are no practical factors which can inhibit that. So I do think that it has its place, but definitely I completely agree with you that it's not meant to be presented as an alternative to Judaism for people who otherwise could convert to Judaism. It should, yeah.
I agree that according to the status quo, Judaism, the legal system as it exists today, cannot be for everyone, for political reasons, for any other reasons that modern day Jews have created to separate the world from entering. But I believe that Torah is for everybody. In other words, I don't want someone, only because they don't live near a synagogue or they have a Beth Din to convert them, to say that they feel bound only to keep 7 laws when they already are convinced that the Torah is true. I want them to at least adopt the status of transition, saying, I'm in transition. I'm definitely in a covenant with God. They accept the mitzvot, just like the Erev Rav and the Hebrews accepted the mitzvot on Har Sinai. They're not halachically Jewish, but they shouldn't feel that if they know that it's wrong, that God says it's a toeva to eat pork, but that they should be okay with eating pork because some Chabad rabbi said that he could worship God by eating crab.
You're exactly right. That's exactly how I feel as well. Also, actually, if you look carefully, that's also the lashon of the Rambam in Hilchot Melachim u'Milchamot, because he says over there that, I think he says it like this: Hushlema haTorah al yad Moshe Rabbeinu. So basically, the Torah was completed at the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu. We received the final matbea, let's say, like the final form, he received it from Hashem, and from that point on, it would be subject to change anymore. However, everybody who came before, all generations before, from the Avot until Har Sinai, were technically Bnei Noach, but that doesn't mean, like, if you ask any of those like Kabbalistic rabbis, like, especially they would say that they kept more, even according to them, that they kept all 613 mitzvot, which I don't believe, but
Chazal don't teach that the Noahide laws are only 7 laws. There's different opinions. Some people say 30, some people say all the mitzvot. The Rambam agreed with the notion of 7 laws, right? But I don't think whether they were Bnei Noach by today's understanding. Yes, they were descendants of Noach. Yes, they were descendants of Shem, but they kept mitzvot, whether they had 10 mitzvot, 12 mitzvot, 613 mitzvot. It was ultimately a progression. I mean,
exactly, and that's what I was getting at. That the Torah only became complete. The covenant became the nation of Israel was born at Har Sinai, but before that, I guess it was easier to enter and to leave because there wasn't a strict boundary. But everybody was encouraged by Avraham Avinu.
But there was no Sanhedrin. That's the only thing that being a halachic Jew ties you to the punishments of the Sanhedrin. That's it. The relationship with God could be had through the Taryag mitzvot, even in Galut. I mean, nowadays we have no Sanhedrin. What keeps people religious nowadays? It seems like everyone also has that covenant relationship with God, those who claim to worship God, because there is no punishment for breaking commandments.
Right.
So this is why someone who doesn't have the ability to convert should still identify with the covenant. And I don't have an issue with the descriptive term Ben or Bat Noach, but I do have an issue with Noahides with a capital N, like this new religion that places you in a box, right? If you walk into a synagogue and you say that you're a Ben or a Bat Noach, but they'll tell you to turn on the light switch on Shabbat, you know what I mean?
Right. That is ridiculous. Also, but I think that there are certain smart people, learned people who are mainstream rabbis, mostly Sephardic ones, even those who believe in Kabbalah and Zohar and everything, who have an approach which is very much like ours. I remember when I was still in Amsterdam and I was trying to convert, I went to the Sephardic Dayan of the Portuguese community, Moroccan rabbi of Pinchas Toledano, and I was talking, to him about how I came to Judaism, etc. And then he asked me if I had siblings. So I said, yeah, I have a brother. And the first thing what he said was, Be'ezrat Hashem shegam hu yikanes tachat kanfei hashchina. Like, you talk to him a bit and whatever, show him how great life as a Jew is, he'll also convert, Be'ezrat Hashem. That didn't happen.
But your father was Jewish, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think
that's
my
the
father,
approach that's typically
my father
taken.
actually is not halachically Jewish. My father is not halachically Jewish. His father was, but it's basically his family lineage.
Because I know that's the approach that many rabbis, even Rabbi Vadi Yosef, he gave a haskama to the Eternal Jewish Family. I don't know if you remember, like 10 years ago, this organization that their main goal was to proselytize the wives of secular Jewish men and or possibly convert their children through encouragement, but they weren't for proselytizing someone who had no Jewish blood. So it's still, this is one issue I have with, what's the name of that Dutch rabbi Nathan Cardozo, right?
Yeah.
Cardozo. He's too much on the left for me in general, but one of his first shiurim that I heard was him encouraging proselytizing only like if you had a Jewish father. So it's like, you're not helping,
Yeah, I agree. You're taking away just from the fact that it is relevant no matter what your lineage is. But I actually think that at that point I didn't even mention that to this rabbi. And he just thought that it was generally a good thing that people want to convert to Judaism. And actually, I saw the same thing from my rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov Peretz. Here's basically the way that he looks at who should convert to Judaism is who has an inclination to and wants to live an ethical life. I saw this once because he always likes to rant in his shiurim, for lack of a better term, if I say it disrespectfully, but he likes to, which is necessary, I think, about the lack of manners, just lack of manners, like general manners. He always likes to talk about that in his shiurim, and he always likes to emphasize the fact that if you can't behave properly towards other people, and you're not a ben adam, then you shouldn't be in the business of teaching Torah to other people and learning specific halachot. He always likes to make these comparisons, which many people, definitely Haredim, they really don't like to hear it. He says, okay, this person did such and such, which is basically interpersonal avera, and this person ate basar b'chalav. Like, which do you think is worse? And he always tries to emphasize the fact that ben adam la chavero is how important it is. And I remember that he came to some place to do hashgacha for food, and he spoke to a Scandinavian man there, and he was he admired Judaism, and he has showed a lot of respect to the rabbi, and he was just a mensch basically. And Rav Peretz said, wow, if I could just convert him, he would be a model Jew. Like, I would want to convert, I would like to convert him to Judaism. So yeah,
no, I think it's common sense. Obviously, common sense is in common, but you have to be taught otherwise. In any group, Jews, for example, in America, are very involved in advertising, in marketing. So they know how to spread a good idea, right? But for some reason, when it comes to Judaism, they're indoctrinated to think that mitzvot only make the world a better place if they come from ethnic-born Jews, which is completely irrational. Right, but the truth is,
that's mysticism. That's complete mysticism. That's saying like born Jews have a higher soul, and therefore it will only be a proper.
Welcome to Chabad.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what they're saying, and it not only does it then follow that you shouldn't convert people to Judaism, or that it is of no value if non-Jews do mitzvot. But even more, it takes away also practical good from the mitzvot that Jews do, even, because you're basically, by saying that, you're basically acknowledging that none of these things have any practical value. They're only of spiritual value. Like they are, you're doing them like you're putting on tefillin, not in order to remind yourself of what's written on the parashiot of the tefillin and how to act in the world, but you're doing it in order to, do some tikkun of shorashim in upper worlds or something like that, So yeah, it's definitely, I agree with you. It's a big,
and it makes secular Jews. See, the thing is, if a Jew knows that what makes him special to God is because of Helik Elokam Imal Mamish, that he has a soul part of God, he feels no hunger, no urge to do mitzvah, because that's not what personifies him as a Jew. So what personifies him as a Jew is that he's physically part of God. And this is that what gave birth to secular Judaism. It was Kabbalah, but mainly by the Arizal and later on the Tanya, that gave birth to secular Judaism, because you had Jews being told that what made them special to God is not what they believe or how they behave, but the neshama in them. You know what I mean?
I understand what you say. I don't know if that is exactly what gave birth to secular Judaism, because there was secular Judaism way before the Admor Zaken of Chabad and I think the
I mean the Haskalah.
Right. But I think they didn't really need the stamp of approval of those rabbis. I think they just, for them, like Judaism was already a cultural phenomenon.
No, but before then, when someone stopped keeping Torah, Israel stopped claiming them. In other words, afterwards, nowadays, when you have Chabad asking people just if their mother is Jewish to put on tefillin, instead of asking them, do you believe in Torah?
Yes, exactly. It's true. Then they did, as is written in the plain halakha, that a person who doesn't keep Shabbat or probably desecrate Shabbat is no longer considered an Israelite. He's just kagoy l'chol davar. That's how they related to him. That's true. Awesome. So it did. It gave a stamp of approval, a rabbinic stamp of approval, basically, to non-religious behavior. Yeah, that's true.
I think before the rise of Kabbalah, once someone stopped keeping Torah, they ceased to be claimed by the community. I'm really dating it with a Haskalah, with the Jewish Enlightenment, when people used to write secular literature and poetry in Hebrew, the rise of Yiddish culture. They had nothing to do with religion. Now, this couldn't have happened in the time of Chazal. Back then, people used to sit Shiva when their child went off the derech. That's my point.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I'm kind of on the fence of how I would relate myself to such people, because, what is different today is that you have the State of Israel, and the State of Israel will be Jewish no matter what, even if it's secular or if it's religious. And if it's secular, then it's just going to be one big ghetto of secular Jewish culture, which basically adds nothing to the world. And if it's religious, then it may still contribute ethically to the world, and it will hopefully
it depends what strand of religious. I think that intermarriage is not a bad thing, and Jews going off is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you can't keep them in a bubble. In Europe, when Jews went off the derech, society recycled them, and 2 generations down the road, perhaps they would have become Christian or become Muslim. In other words, they would have still been religious to some extent, and they would still have hope to come back to the Jewish people. If you keep Jews in a bubble, in a secular bubble, which now in Israel someone could claim to be 3, 4, even 5 generations Jewish and secular, something that's never happened in Jewish history, because there's no way to wash out the bad blood, and that's something that Galut was there to provide. Now, we're technically still...
You are right, but I would like to add, though, that this is my personal belief, and I do agree with you that personal beliefs are optional, and practically we should be adopting a halachic approach, etc. But from the Nevuot, I believe that perhaps you can even read it in the Torah, is that the Torah says that when you will be in Galut, and you will serve other gods, and you will serve nations with other gods, and basically you will you will not live a proper Jewish lifestyle. But in the end, you will make teshuvah and you will come back. And I believe that perhaps the fact that people remain Jewish like it is today in Israel, that people will be secular for a couple of generations, that I hope that will open up the door for those people to eventually make teshuvah again and start fulfilling the role of the people of Israel in the world again. And that's kind of how I see it also on the basis of Nevuot. So
no, but Zat Hashem, history I think paints a different story. Sephardic Jews, when they came to Israel, I think 99% of them were Shomer Torah mitzvahs fully. In one generation, they almost dropped it all. Now, I understand in the 80s and the 90s with people, even Meir Kahana brought a lot of Sephardim back to Torah, and Rabbi Vadi Yosef's efforts. But it seems like it worked the other way around. They took Jews who were religious and made them secular. So this is the big argument against the Satmar Rav.
You think? Why is that?
No, because it took Jews that were religious from Muslim countries. When they entered Israel, they almost all dropped Torah. Now they're slowly coming back.
I think that's not a natural development. I actually do think that was just the state of Israel did that. It was like their not the existence of the state of Israel per se, but just
the founders of it. The founders were anti-religious. They used to get people.
They shmad against Judaism. The state of Israel. I'm for the state of Israel existing, but its founding fathers were rotten to the core.
Right. Well, nowadays they're not. They're a little more religious, but still, the country I would say is around maybe 85 to 90% irreligious, not completely atheist. I made Aliyah, and then when I made Aliyah, I was an optimistic believer in the state and the government. And then when I made Yerida, the reason I made Yerida is because I became a pessimist. I was a settler, and I just saw that everything was against us. And most settlers aren't Zionists to begin with. I would hang out with like the Kingdom of Judea guys, guys who didn't care about the government but wanted Israel to be religious. So I can understand where David Bar Chaim is coming from. People call him a religious Zionist. Religious Zionist is not the proper term because we don't really endorse the actual government. But,
yes, exactly. That's also my point of view. I'm above all here pragmatic because I think that is kind of a pipe dream at best to say that we can make our own religious kingdom and then whatever, then that will spread to the state of Israel somehow, or we can coexist next to it or something. Like, I've read all these theories, but I just don't think that they are viable, and I think therefore to say that, well, the state of Israel should just make way for something else is very dangerous, because the more division there is, the more likely it becomes that it will be destroyed. And for that reason, I do think that at the moment we should basically support the existence of the state of Israel, and even if it is secular, but basically still try to influence it as much as possible. I don't really see any other option what to do. And being the case, I also think that we should bring people closer to Judaism who are, let's say, between brackets, ethnic Israeli Jews, and that we should really try to bring them back to Judaism. But for me, definitely that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be helping non-Jews either. I see that as going together. Every religious Jew in Israel helps, at least so I hope. Again, that's optimism, but if when non-Jews come here and convert to Judaism and show born Jews how it's done, then that's great.
Right. I like the approach of Rabbi Yeshaya Leibowitz, which was he basically supported the state just like he supports any democracy. I realize that Israel's a great ally in the war against terror, and I support it from a secular perspective. I believe in its existence, but I don't believe the words in the Tefilat LeMedina, the prayer for the state of Israel, that is the flourishings, like the first flourishings of the Messianic age and all this stuff.
Yeah, I don't say that either. I don't believe that either. And I do support it for the reasons that you say and what I mentioned earlier, without endorsing its government or thinking that it is some kind of like messianic
But that being said, I think that former Christians make the best Jews. And I think that we should be able to learn from our neighbors. I mean, I used to be Christian. I converted about, I don't know, almost 25 years ago. And I just think that just like in the Second Temple times, that it was basically converts who saved Judaism. Rabbi Meir, Onkelos, Shammai V'Avtalion, even Rabbi Akiva to a certain extent. And I think nowadays it may also be converts, people who don't have an axe to grind, who are new to it all and are able to absorb holiness like a sponge. And this is why I see tikva through the mikvah. You know what I mean? That the hope is going to come through converts. Cool, man. Do you have like a website or something?
No, at the moment I don't. I'm going to work on that with the videos and everything. But I agree with you there. Definitely, converts can do a great deal in repairing Judaism, and that's what makes it so absolutely necessary to introduce them to proper Judaism, because we want them to join the good team and not the team which is responsible for the kilkul, which there is at the moment in Judaism.
This is why I'm not so enthusiastic to see another temple, and for sure not another Sanhedrin, because who's going to run it, right? I mean,
yeah. I agree. I used to be all like that as well. Like we're going to have like a Samicha Mehudeshet, like the Rambam says, and we're going to have the greatest rabbis of the generation, have the Sanhedrin and everything, but.
Right, the Nasi of the last Sanhedrin was a Lubavitcher, Adam Steinsaltz. I mean, he wasn't a Meshachist, but still, I mean, if there's a temple, who's going to run it? Satmar, right? So it's better. I like the way things are now, that we're figuring out our problems and working them out, slowly but surely. But I don't see Mashiach around the corner.
Yeah, I sadly have to agree with that, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Rabbi Chaim, thank you. Thank you for this interview. So if someone wants to find you on Facebook, I mean, you're there to answer all questions for conversions, Judaism.
Yes, exactly. If people need practical help, because I think there are enough people who are willing to teach for conversion, but not enough people who are willing to practically help people to actually become Jewish. So, if you want to convert to Judaism and you need practical help with it, then I'm there. I just want to say that I can most probably not help you get a conversion which is approved by the State of Israel, or maybe, I don't know how things work in America, but probably the American rabbinic organizations. But I would also like to definitely encourage people to convert to Judaism anyway, because there are so many people who I talk to and who eventually say, oh, if it's not going to be accepted by the State of Israel, then I would prefer to wait another few years and then do a conversion which is approved. And that is definitely something. If anything, I would want to say that to people listening. Like, don't be fooled by that. Don't say, oh, it has to be approved by these rabbinical organizations, else it's not worth anything. First of all, it is worth something because, one, you make your own covenant with God. That's the first. Second, it's even halachically valid, even if no contemporary rabbi would officially write that down for you. I mean, you are a member of the nation of Israel if you convert through a Beit Din, which is not recognized by the State of Israel. The State of Israel has no authority whatsoever to determine whether you are Jewish or not. And eventually, when we become a group that is big enough to really influence, then our influence will grow anyway, even if they don't want it. Like, eventually we will be big enough to make an impact on the Jewish nation. So convert to Judaism, and if you need help with that, then be in touch with me. I'm on Facebook. My name there is Chaim Samuel, which is Chaim and then Samuel. So you can reach me that way. And that's it.
Awesome, man. That's music to my ears. I'm very proud to have you as a member of our people. And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for taking the time.